Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Okay, well, welcome to the Goud Crowd. I'm your host, Goud. And I'm gone. I don't know if you can still hear me, so I'll keep talking. I think my producer is doing something weird. Okay. Oh. Dwayne, what's going on here, man? There we go. Okay. Anyway, it's great to be back.
Hey, I was just pushing the wrong buttons, Goud. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, I was gone last week. I had to go to San Diego for a funeral. And pay my respects to someone who's very important to me growing up. So sorry about the not having a show last week. The only time I could fly was during when the show would have normally been on. And I guess some of you may know this, but yesterday was my birthday, so I'll just tell you a little bit of a funny story. When I was in San Diego, that's where the funeral was, and my parents lived there. My mother got all worked up that I was leaving on Friday, and so I said to her, I was like, "Well, what's the big deal? You had me 48 years ago. It can't be that big, like a live memory anymore. You must be over the pain by now." She lost it. She was like, "Oh, I still remember I took you in on Monday and then I came out on Wednesday and you were born. It took a long time." She's all worked up. And then she texted me on Saturday to wish me happy birthday when my birthday was on Sunday. So it's like she didn't even remember the day of my birthday. If she's listening, she's probably going to get worked up. Anyway, today we're going to talk about Stuart Adams and what has all the developments in this situation with changing the law to benefit his granddaughter. I think that's where we're at. I think this story has been changing over time. Like, we didn't know how the person was related to him. I think it's his granddaughter. Some of the pieces seem to be moving a little bit, and it's very clear that he has no plans on resigning. But today we'll go through the timeline. You guys can call in at any point in time. We'll get the number up. Mr. Producer, can we get the number up? But I can tell you it's 385-899-2134. And so this is your opportunity to sound off as to whether you think that President Adams should resign from the Senate, or what you think of the situation generally. I do think there seems to be mixed opinions on this. I've seen some people who are very unhappy with what happened and want him to resign. I've seen other people, though, who think this is totally normal and there's no big deal there. So I think I'll be interested to hear what you guys think. We'll have a segment by one of my friends from Illinois that I grew up with. We're going to call this Back Home with Brandy. And so she's going to give us an update of some of the crazy stuff happening in my home state where I grew up, because I think Illinois is basically like the California of the Midwest. And it's good to keep track of what's going on there because it's a good indication of what's going to come here. And nationwide, really, because really, if you think about it, Governor Pritzker is trying to run for president. So you want to keep track of what's going on over there. There we go. We got live. The call-in number is now up. Let's see. We've got chat. Oh, we got Disagree Butter says, let's roll. Let's roll. Let's go. Okay. So let's go here. And then we'll also, if we have time, we'll talk about the gerrymandering. I was looking to see if there's a decision that's supposed to come out today from a district court judge. I haven't seen it yet. So, but I'll just give you a little bit of background on Utah's maps. And then finally, we have that AI data center that was approved in Millard County. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, so let's talk about Stuart Adams. So I went on to the docket for the case, and I was able to pull some information that will give us a little bit more background about what happened here. So, and I feel like that's generally been missing because I think source documents have been a little bit hard to come by. So here's the first one. This happens to me every time where I can't find my document. Oh, here. Let's see, does that work? Okay, here we go. So this is the indictment in the case. And so if you look here, you can see, I'll just say this. This is a public document. So if anyone's worked up about the fact that it's being shown online, like anyone can go get it, it is public. And the information for criminal defendants is also public if they're adults. And so in this case, Stuart Adams's granddaughter was 18 at the time that she raped a 13-year-old. And it has to be rape in all circumstances because a 13-year-old under Utah law cannot consent to sex. You have to be 14. And it doesn't matter if the child is 13 and 51 weeks, 13 and 51 weeks and 6 days. They cannot consent until they turn 14. That's our law. 14 is the age of consent. And you can see here, she was charged, I think, April 18th of 2023 is when this indictment was filed. It has the original charges. So this is under the old law before the law was changed during the 2024 session. So this is your buildup that gets you to the 2024 session when the law was changed so that 18-year-olds who have sex with 13-year-olds, I should say 18-year-olds in high school who have sex with 13-year-olds can be charged like 17-year-olds. That doesn't happen until that 2024 session. So you can see here, she's being charged pretty seriously. Rape of a child, a first-degree felony, rape of a child, sodomy on a child, sodomy on a child. Okay. What I thought was interesting is there's more factual information about the case in this document than maybe what we've seen in some of the reporting. Specifically, I'll say I've read multiple social media posts, multiple articles that say that she and this boy had sex multiple times, and there have been implications that the first encounter was when she was still 17. That is not true if you look at this indictment. So basically here, he talks about, they say that the way this works is because he was a minor, because the victim was a minor and the victim is a male, he was interviewed by the Children's Justice Center. That's how this works. They have people that are specifically trained to be able to deal with minors who have been sexually abused and to treat them the right way. So that's what happened here. During that interview, he talked about how he had met the defendant. Her name's Abigail Ross. Now, he met her several months ago through one of her friends. So I think that they met when she was 17, not when she was 18. Then on April 4th of 2023, they had their first sexual intercourse in the back of her car. And then and he says at the time that they did that, she knew that he was 13. So she knew he was below the age of consent. I want to add, they did not both go to the same school. She was in high school when this happened. He was in junior high. So you kind of hear some people talking about this idea that, oh, they were both high school students. That is not accurate. Only one was a high school student. Okay, and then they made out. So that was the first encounter. The second encounter was the next day, April 5th of 2023. They have a second sexual encounter. Then he said that afterwards, I'm reading right here, he felt stressed out about what had happened and he didn't go to school. The victim said that this led him to telling his brother about what had happened. He disclosed that after the incident, he and the defendant discussed that they know it shouldn't have happened and said goodbye because they knew they weren't going to talk to each other anymore. So, and then on April 10th of 2023, so it's just a few days later, so 5 days later, police received a report from a friend of the defendant and the victim explaining that she and others were aware that the two had engaged in sexual intercourse and were concerned due to the age difference and thought it should be reported. So that's kind of how this ends up with the police. Okay, so that's your first little document. I'll stop sharing. Now, so now we get into the lawsuit piece of this, right? We're in 2023, still no action at the legislature. If you look at the docket, I pulled the docket as well. This, have two docket things. I apologize. Let me find my other docket. Oh, hold on. Oh, so then I have. So okay, hold on. Give me 1 second here, because I realized what happened next is that I'm getting confused. Support of guilty plea, public safety assessment, signed statement, jail statement. Some of my things are missing, and I put them all in here. Well, okay, so then they actually agree on the conditions of her release, right? And I will say that there was a lot of restrictions placed on her. I just want to be fair about this, because I do think that so April 21st of 2023, she had actually been arrested and then put in jail for a little bit, right? And I think that's been out in the news. But then when she has defense counsel, they agree on her pretrial conditions, and they put or her pretrial release, they put conditions on it. And I will say, when the prosecutor's office did an analysis to determine what type of how they should treat her in terms of being released out of jail, they actually came up with she was a low risk release. So they said just on personal recognizance. I thought this order was interesting because it actually is not just on personal recognizance. They put a bunch of restrictions on her, including she had to wear an ankle monitor and go through electronic monitoring, which I didn't realize you actually have to pay for that. So she paid for that. She was only allowed to go to certain places. So she could go to where she lived, her attorney's office, in court appearances, her therapist, other medical appointments, school internship. And I think at some point later on, they allow her to go to work as well. She's got a protective order, so she can't actually contact the victim or his family. And then I thought she also could not have any contact with anyone under the age of 18, except her 3 minor siblings that lived in the house. So she couldn't enter places or events where persons under the age of 18 years congregate, including but not limited to schools, playgrounds, parks. She couldn't commit any offenses, although that one doesn't strike me as very hard because, I think most people don't really commit crimes. And then basically if she violated any of this, she would have been put right back into jail. So, but I think these are actually pretty strict restrictions. When it kind of seems like, and again, I just want to be fair about this, that this was maybe like a one-time or a two-time situation, and from what I've been reading, it doesn't seem like she'll reoffend. It's not like one of those crazy stories where the teachers are, they're like crazy for some 13-year-old student and they go after him and keep doing it with him or whatever. Okay. So that's it. Then if you look at the actual docket to this case, you'll see that there's a lot of continuances on it going on for months and months. And the reason, it turns out, because what's kind of interesting is, I think here, this, and I'm not a prosecutor or I don't do criminal law, but this, based on what we know, it seems like the case is pretty strong, and so they could have moved forward with what they knew to try to win the lawsuit based on the merits, but they didn't do that. Instead, it looks like they were trying to get a plea deal from the prosecutor's side, and we find that out later on during the sentencing hearing. They actually could not agree to a plea deal, and the sticking point was that the prosecutor's office wanted her to sign up, or not to have to register on the sex offender list for life, and the defense attorney wouldn't agree to that, which makes sense. That's what the defense attorney is supposed to do, right? Okay, so that's where we are. So this is going on for months and months and months. You can see like they just keep on. There's a lot of, they set pretrial conferences and they continue them. So pretrial conference, continuance, pretrial. You see this, it just keeps going months and months. There's not a lot of developments here, and a lot of the documents in the case are actually private. I don't think there's anything unusual about that. I was talking to a friend of mine who does criminal law. She was a prosecutor before, and she said she didn't seem to think nothing unusual in this case from that perspective. But it does make it a little bit harder because there's some documents I wasn't able to get. For example, Stuart Adams actually submitted a letter in support of his granddaughter, and I can't get a copy of it because it's been marked as private. Now, it's one of 2 letters that were submitted. I think the other one was submitted by her parents, but now that since we can't see it, we don't actually know what he wrote. I did send him an email and asked him for a copy of it, but I'm sure you're surprised he didn't respond. I don't have a copy of it. And then I also emailed the defense attorney, Kara, I think her name is Tangaro, and I haven't heard back from her yet either. I don't know if she'll produce it or not. I have to say I saw her photo and I realized I've met her before, but I don't know where I've met her. So anyway, there's that. So then what happens? So let me pull up the Trib article. So then the next thing that happens is that let's see. The next thing that happens is that Stuart Adams, right? He confides in Kirk Cullimore. So Stuart Adams is the Senate president. Kirk Cullimore is the majority leader, so he would be underneath the Senate president. He tells him what's going on with his granddaughter, and that he thinks that the punishment for what she did is too severe. So, and I guess the reasoning is that she was 18 at the time, but she was 18 and in high school. So, and you'll kind of get a sense here that people are making this distinction, this idea that if you're still in high school, you should be treated like other high school students, no matter what your age is. That's kind of what I'm getting, and we're beginning to kind of, let me see, like undermine this idea that when you turn 18, you're actually an adult, right? So when you turn 18, there's all these things you can do that you couldn't do before. You can vote, that's a big one. You can go sign up for the military and go die for your country. It's another big one. You used to be able to smoke. I don't know if you can do that anymore. Maybe you can still smoke, maybe you can't, not sure. I guess alcohol is 21. I think you used to be able to buy guns at 18. I don't actually know what the rules are on that anymore because I feel like we're constantly actually diminishing what it means. We're making what should be a clear, bright line rule. We're actually turning it into this weird area where we're making everything way too complicated, I think. And my own view is like, once you're 18, you're an adult. We treat you like an adult. And even if you're in high school, because it's a big deal to turn 18. I think I remember when I turned, well, I guess I don't really remember, but I feel like we all knew that 18 meant you were an adult. And so doing this kind of diminishing or like kind of, I can't think of the word. It's making it not clear. Muddying the waters as to what it means to be an adult is just making things messy. Okay, so what we have next, though, is Stuart Adams tells Kirk Cullimore about what happens with his granddaughter, right? And I'm just going to say this because I'm confused about how Stuart Adams how Robert Gerke is the one that broke the story. And I don't mean this offensively to Robert Gerke. I just don't understand where he got the information from. And I think that's kind of an interesting piece that we don't know. And I wonder if, because, for example, he knew about the conversation between Cullimore and Stuart Adams. How does he know about that? There were only 2 people that were involved in it, right? So who told Robert Gerke that there was this private conversation between Stuart Adams and Kirk Cullimore? So, for example, did Kirk Cullimore tell him? And were they trying to is Kirk Cullimore trying to knock Stuart Adams out? There's some kind of interesting political intrigue here, I think. So like I said, I've got the Salt Lake Tribune article, the first one up about this. And as you can see, like I said, Stuart Adams confides in Kirk Cullimore saying, I think this punishment is too harsh, and so maybe we should do something about it. Now, what ends up happening is that Kirk Cullimore, who is a lawyer himself but does not practice criminal law, goes and ends up working with with Abby Ross's, that's Stuart Adams's granddaughter, with her defense attorney to then draft this provision. Now, before we get there, just this now gets into SB 213. So SB 213 was passed in 2024, and that is a bill. Let me see if I move this. What happens with that? Okay, this SB 213 had a bunch of different provisions in it, changing various aspects of Utah's criminal justice laws. So let me put this up so you can just get a sense of it. But there's a bunch of different modifications to various provisions of criminal law. This was developed, I believe, over the summer interim. So this is interim. I mean, I don't know if it's summer interim, but interim. That's in between your sessions. They have these interim meetings where they'll be developing new bills and they'll be working on them. So SB 213 was one of those bills, I think, developed through that process. But also they worked with the Utah Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice and the Utah Sentencing Commission. And it says, and other stakeholders. But this provision did not go through that process because the Sentencing Commission director actually came out. His name's Dan Strong, and he said that the language dealing with 18-year-old high school students was not among the recommendations of the working group. So this provision actually is different. It did not go through that process. It was not discussed in these various committees that have been going on for months. Kirk Cullimore worked specifically with Abby Ross's defense attorney to develop the provision outside of that general process. So, like, to me, that's a problem, that we had this provision that went through a special process because someone's family member was being impacted negatively by what they did, right? And that's a problem. And I think, though, there's a deeper issue here that we all need to be thinking about. And this is the issue. I don't think this is the only example of our legislators using laws to benefit their family members, to benefit their donors, to benefit their friends. I think this one is just where it's been exposed. And maybe it represents a pattern that we don't fully understand yet. Because, like I said, somebody broke this story to Robert Gerke. And again, I don't mean that in any offensive way. Like, I don't think Robert Gerke, like, I think he's obviously like a partisan hack. But I do think he hits on some good stuff. He hit on something good here. But I think someone brought it to him because I don't think he would have been able to put all this together unless someone in the know was like, wait a minute, something bad happened here. And I feel like it had to be someone that knew about this conversation between the Senate president and Robert Gerke. So, for example, like, I don't think it's the mother of the victim. I'm not really sure that she would have had the inside knowledge to be able to come forward with this. There's someone political that's pushing this. It doesn't mean that the story is any less valid, just so we're clear. It just means it's like we should be paying attention to that, as well as what happened, because, like I said, I think this is part of a pattern where our legislators, I think like I've said multiple times, I think Utah is the most corrupt state in the country, and I grew up in Illinois, so that's saying something. Illinois is super duper corrupt. I think Utah actually beats it by a mile. And mainly because we have corruption here, but people are so afraid to call it out because, they want to disagree better or they don't want to be contentious. And so they refuse to go and confront people with their corruption, right? If you do it, then they turn around. The person that you're accusing of corruption will be like, well, I'm a good father and a good husband. And that's their defense, right? Like, yeah, I'm corrupt, but look at all these good things I do for my family. As if that makes up for the fact that they're corrupt. So one thing I want to point out in SB 213 that I do think is important is this provision, even though it was inserted separately from the way the rest of the bill was drafted, it is mentioned in this summary here. So here. It actually says here, modifies the crime of unlawful adolescent sexual activity to include an actor who is 18 years old and enrolled in high school at the time of the sexual activity occurred. So this, and I checked, this is, I think the third, let me look here. The second substitute is what actually passed. But in the original and the first substitute, this this summary is there. So if you're a legislator, you should have, if you would have read at least the summary, you should have seen this. Now, I want to be fair about this. And the only reason I bring this up is because Governor Cox, during his press conference, which I think was last week, he specifically called out that any legislator that is saying that they didn't know about this provision in the bill, he said is lying or is a really bad legislator. And I think he was actually taking aim specifically at Carrie Ann Lisenby, who said she didn't realize. I don't think she said she didn't know this in the bill. I think she said she didn't realize this was in there. Let me get the exact language because let's see what she said. Oh, I thought I had this in here somewhere. Hold on. God, Lisenby. Ah! Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oops. Wrong one. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying. I'm pretty sure. I thought I had a comment from her. Oh. So Representative Carrie Ann Lisenby, she's the House sponsor of the bill, said she was not aware of the impetus of the change for 18-year-olds or Tangaro's role in crafting the language. The legislation passed near the end of the session when bills moved quickly, she said, but now opposes that change to the law. All of my other work in the criminal justice space underscores that if I had known that the proposed language was intended to potentially lower the penalty for the crime of rape of a child, I would have held or amended the bill to remove that section. So this sounds like she just didn't understand what was being proposed here. And I just want to be fair about this. When you get to the end of the session, what did I just do? When you get to the end of the session, these bills move fast, right? Oh, here, this is where I was. They just go, they'll suspend the rules. Now, let me just add, I think part of the problem here is that they pass too many bills in a session. They're doing like 500 bills a session. And so maybe Republicans, because we have a supermajority Republican legislature, could pass fewer bills every year, right? Maybe like we don't need 500 bills passing. And then they could actually pay more attention to what is being passed and focus on what is actually important. I think we have way too many bills being passed per session. And this is a good example of that. If Carrie Ann didn't understand or didn't, that's fair. So Higher Ground said, bills move fast, but sponsors are responsible to know what's in their own bills. Yes, I agree. I think you're right on that. I'm just saying that, to that point, maybe they should stop passing so many bills. We don't need 500 bills. And honestly, because as a citizen, it's impossible for you to be able to get involved and try to go and fight bills or support bills because there's just way too many going on at once. And unless you're like a paid, you'll notice when you go up there, if you've ever been up to the legislative session to testify, is that unless it's like a really big important bill, most of the people there will be people like that are lobbyists or working for nonprofits, which is basically lobbying. And because they are getting paid to be there, they're grassroots people. I think it's much harder to be able to be there all that time because we have jobs. We're trying to get as involved as we can, but there's just way too many bills going on, way too many hearings. It's overwhelming. So I think from a quality perspective, from citizens as well, I think it'd be helpful. So Higher Ground also said blurring the lines, moving the goalposts. That's about blurring the lines for being an adult. I think that's right. Okay, so we get this bill, and like I said, the provision about treating an 18-year-old who has sex with a 13-year-old differently if they're in high school versus if they are not was inserted into this bill by Kirk Cullimore, and it was drafted by Stuart Adams's granddaughter's defense attorney. So I don't know, that doesn't seem like probably normal process to me. Maybe some of you guys think that is the normal process. So let me see if there's anything else I wanted to point out in here that I said. Oh, here. This article by Gerke actually gives some more information about Tangaro's role. So, and he, for some, I guess I didn't understand why he went to Tangereau versus going to a different defense attorney. So if you look here, Cullimore said Adams had confided with him about the charge against the relative and asked him to look into the issue. So like I said, Cullimore doesn't practice criminal law, so he consulted with a few criminal attorneys, included Tangereau. She said the issue, I'm assuming, by the way, that I'm pronouncing her name right. If I'm not, I apologize. She said the issue is that normally prosecutors in these types of cases would consider the circumstances and offer pleas. And she said, for whatever reason, the prosecutor is not, Cullimore said. And I said, what would your ideal be in something like that? Cullimore said there was no intention that the change to the law would impact the pending case. We just thought it would be best policy. But of course, it ended up impacting the case because Tangereau took that back and made that an issue for getting the plea agreement. And by the way, it's not a criticism of Tangereau because she's doing her job as a defense attorney. Like if you ever commit a crime, I think you want someone like this who's going to use this, find every single method in the system to try to defend you and get you the least amount of punishment possible for the crime that you committed. So Cullimore said that Tangereau drafted the language that would allow the lower charge to be filed against the lower level charge to be filed against 18-year-olds still in high school, and he shared it with legislative attorneys. The bill passed without much attention paid to the provision, and Governor Spencer Cox signed it into law on March 19th, 2024. Now, I didn't have time to go and listen to the hearings because Governor Cox in his press conference also said that this was discussed during the floor debates. So at some point I'll try to go and listen to it. It's just, I'll just tell you, like, sometimes I like to listen to stuff on my phone while I'm doing, like if I'm walking my dogs or watering my plants. And, but when you listen to legislative hearings on your phone, you can't like fast forward at all. So it's like, I just listen to a bunch of nonsense and not being able to get to where I need to be. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now we're here. So then this bill passes. It doesn't really have any, I don't think there's anything no controversy when it passes. It sounds like nobody really knew what was the impetus for the addition of that provision. So that seems to be pretty broad-based, except for Cullimore and President Adams. The rest of the senators, representatives were not aware that the impetus to start this, the addition of provision was President Adams's granddaughter's rapey issue, that she raped a 13-year-old. This passed, it looks like, the House 67-4. There are 4 people who just weren't there. They were absent. The people that actually voted against it were Jen Daly Provost. So that's kind of interesting. Garner, I think he's a Democrat. Hollins and Romero. So it's all Democrats that voted against it. Interesting. And then if you look, let me look at let's see what we got in the Senate. It's 20-4, 20-5 did not vote. All the votes against it, again, were Democrats. So I don't know. I'd be interested to know why the Democrats voted against it. I'm guessing the thing is like, knowing the Democrats, I doubt it was this provision that made them vote against it. So that might require a little bit more research to figure out what drove it. Maybe for them, it was that it was too harsh on criminals. Okay, Truth Sleuth says, I appreciate the reference to the I'm a good father justification for corruption. We all know that that's it. Okay, let's see here. Hearing. I'm going to pull up the hearing. So then we've got so the bill passes, right? The one thing I didn't check was the effective date. Let's look at the effective date. Effective. I don't know if there is one. Oh, so it was effective on May 1st of 2024. And then it impacted the plea deal that she was able to get. And we actually have the hearing transcript. So there's that guy, I can't remember his name, but the journalist, he did a really good job actually asking President Adams about this, and I just shared the wrong thing. Hold on. But he actually posted the hearing transcript. So let me pull this up so you can see a little bit of what was discussed. Okay. The hearing transcript is actually worth a read for anybody who has not read it. You can find it on X. So, okay. So you start here. I've highlighted some of what I thought was really interesting. I will say, just before we go down this, the first judge that was involved in this case actually recused himself from this. No, it's not Malahi. It's like the independent journalist guy. Like he's like super muscly with a beard. He like, God, what is his name? This will come to me. If someone knows the name, just put it in the comments and I'll read it. He's the one that went and confronted President Adams in the Capitol about, like you did this, you changed the law to help your granddaughter who raped a 13-year-old, and then Taylor something. Yeah, okay. Okay, we all know what I'm talking about, I guess. Okay, Taylor Hansen, I think that's his name. Yeah, so but he posted the transcript, so you can actually go and read it for yourself. I don't know how to spell it either. So if you look at Miss okay, so this is the hearing transcript. I've kind of highlighted what I thought was really interesting about it, but it starts with this is Miss Vasquez, represents, I think, the Davis County District Attorney's Office, and she says, let's see, I think this is interesting. So first, the state has read all of the information that's been provided from the defense. I did go over with the mother of the victim yesterday, and she did state that she wanted to be able to make a statement today, but that it's been really difficult with her missing as much work as she has, that she wasn't able to come, and so she was going to provide me with a statement written, but she did not do so. So I think part of what we're getting is the mother, it sounds like when you read through the articles that the mother was struggling with what had happened to her son. And I want to be able, so the prosecutor says, I want to be able to give the voice that the victim was really wanted to have this entire time. He himself and his mother and his family, and I think that she did yesterday apologize to the court that she did not want to be here, that she did want to be here, sorry, and finally actually have that voice, but they feel really defeated through this entire process. And I think that's why they're not here today. And I wanted to be able to make sure that that's actually expressed, that the system hasn't really failed them, that they actually get to have that voice today. The victim and his mother feel that the system has failed them. I think this is indicative of them feeling like I think that they felt like there was something wrong here with the way that this was being handled, because of the connection to Stuart Adams, right? At this point in time, by the time the hearing comes, the defense has filed a letter of support from Stuart Adams. Now, we don't know what the letter says, because like I said, it's been marked private and they don't read it onto the record, but it's there. So if you are the victim's mother, you have probably seen this and you understand now, at least I'm kind of speculating a little bit, maybe you understand that Stuart Adams has some sort of impact on what's going to happen here. And then she says, this is the prosecutor again, I know that she really has been dealing with the victim going through suicidal actions and things like that in his life. And so I just wanted to express to the court, this is not out of disrespect for the process. It's just the process really in their eyes has failed them. So just so people understand, like the victim is suffering from this. I think sometimes what happens is people think because he's a boy, he may not suffer the same way a girl would. Right? People typically think that for boys, that when they have sex like this, that it's all exciting and there's no downsides. But I think one thing that I'm not sure about, I'm going to assume that he's probably LDS. And I think for LDS people, especially, and for people that are more faithful, there is usually a lot of value put on remaining a virgin until you get married. So just imagine it from that perspective, that you've now violated this covenant you had with God, and how you feel about that and the guilt that can be associated with that and trying to deal with that. I think maybe that's what some of it is going on here. She does say that the 13-year-old has tried to stay away from this because he has emotional distress and he's going through from not quite understanding that he was a 13-year-old and not blaming himself for all of this and all of that. And the trauma, and then also just with the trauma that it's caused him and with his peers. And so it's not the court process that's really affected, and mostly it's been the underlying offense. The court asks, is it the process or the offense dealing with what happened? So the prosecutor says, I think it's the offense, not necessarily the process when it comes to the 13-year-old. And here's kind of a key point. The mother and the victim say they feel like there hasn't been adequate consequences for the underlying conduct. And they understand that she was released after 8 days. She spent 8 days in jail. They understand that 8 days for a young individual in jail is difficult, but to them, looking at the overall crime, even though she was released on home confinement, they kept seeing things being whittled away, that she was still allowed to go out and do activities with her family and different things like that. And they felt like that's not appropriate consequences for the conduct. So, but most importantly, I think in the statement that the state would like to just present to the court today is just that no matter what, the law at the time that she committed the act was that an 18-year-old is responsible and there are consequences for criminal actions. And the victims are asking that there be more consequences than just 8 days of jail. And I'll submit on that. The victim and his mother wanted this woman to spend more than eight days in jail for what she did. Okay, so then this is the judge then responds. One of the things the judge says is, I reviewed the letters that were submitted by Stuart and Susan Adams, Ronnie Ross, and Elizabeth Ross. So I think Ronnie and Elizabeth are the parents. Stuart and Susan Adams. It's President Adams and his wife. This here you can see this. If you actually go to the docket and look, it doesn't identify who wrote the letters, and so I don't know if this is a character letter or if this is a letter of support for the plea agreement. What is a little bit, like I said, I think we need, because one of the things that Governor Cox said during his press conference is that we know all the facts and that we don't need to do an investigation. We know everything. Everything's been disclosed. That's not true. This is one piece of information that has not been disclosed. We do not know what Stuart Adams said in his letter. And I think that's important to know. And I think I was just saying this a few minutes ago, I forgot. The original judge on this case actually recused himself from the lawsuit. And he recused himself when the prosecutor and defense attorney went to him and said, we have a plea agreement. That's when he recused himself and a new judge was assigned. There's no information about why he recused himself. He said that he didn't feel, there was a statement put out, I think, by the court, maybe saying he didn't feel political pressure. But I do feel like that's another piece that we need to know more about. Why did the first judge recuse himself? This just seems kind of weird, right? Unless he knew the defendant. But if he knew the defendant, or if he knew the defendant, or if he knew the victim, it just seems like he should have recused himself much earlier than after they come and say they have a plea agreement. Okay, so here, now you have Miss Tangaro. So this is the, Tangaro, I'm not sure. Anyway, like I said, don't know how to pronounce her name. Apologies if I'm saying it wrong. She says, so she's the defense attorney. Just keep that in mind. Her job is to defend the client, to defend the defendant, get her the best terms possible. Typically try to get a mistrial. You try to get this thrown out. Here, she's trying to get a good plea agreement for her client. She said, these two kids met when Abby was 17. And that's played out. They met. They were friends. But the sexual portion of this did not happen until after Abby turned 18. And she said, we have many text messages between these two that shows this was really a young, although inappropriate relationship. And so I think that's important. Fair, get fair. And then she says, and this is, I was offended by this. I actually posted about it, but she says, I know that the victim's mother has been very invested in this prosecution, and I don't want to denigrate her at all, but she has some significant personal issues as part of the case that came to light. So I don't want to denigrate her, but let me talk about all of her personal problems. You're literally denigrating her in the same sentence. She's had fentanyl addiction and other things that feels as if somehow she's at fault because she wasn't as present or appropriate as a mother at the time. this to me is just beyond the pale, because it's trying to shift the blame for this to the mother from the defendant. And it is the defendant that committed the acts. The reality is, when you have, well, I don't have teenage kids, but I can remember being a teenager. I just think, teenagers can find ways to go and be off on their own without their parents necessarily knowing where they are. So to blame yourself, to blame the parent for that, I think is a little bit weird to me. But I also think it's weird for the defense attorney to bring that up. Let's see here. Now, I want to point this out because she says, Abby is suffering potentially the same charge as a 50-year-old man and a 12-year-old. And so I think we need to look at those factors, and that's where the idea of what's appropriate for sentencing. So the reason I want to point this out, and we'll play part of Governor Cox's statement in a little while here, but the 50-year-old man thing, if you notice, that keeps coming up. That's a talking point. So I've heard multiple elected officials when they've gone on to say this, she's being treated like a 50-year-old man. Okay, so that's clearly, they must have poll tested it or something as like, this would be a very effective way to advocate for, in this woman, in the defense attorney's case, to advocate for getting her client a lower sentence. In the case of the people trying to push this new law, to advocate for changing the law. So let's see. Higher Ground says those comments against the mother aren't even germane. Super victim blaming. Yeah, totally. Like, talk about offensive, right? She got arrested at high school. So this is what happened. She got arrested at high school, literally picked up, arrested at high school, and put into jail for 8 days. You've seen the letters from her parents that talk about what was going on with her at that time. I mean, certainly that's traumatizing. I'm not, even if that happened to me, I'd be traumatized by it. Fine. She also says that the client has a lower risk to reoffend. She's a defense attorney, so I'm sure she probably always says that. This is like when your teacher tells you you're her favorite class. Sure. or your dad tells you you're his favorite child. It's also two of you. Yeah, probably says that to all his kids. Then the defense attorney says she has had significant consequences. She had to finish school online. She did it. She didn't get to go to her graduation. She hasn't been able to work because of wearing an ankle monitor in the circumstances. And yet she's come through this. She's done everything she's needed to. She's doing sex offender therapy. So she's trying to, rehabilitate herself. We can give credit where credit's due. Then she says, given totality of these circumstances, and you saw the legislative change, just adding that if you're in high school, 18 and in high school, that's obviously going to affect a very small number of cases, but the legislative intent was someone in her situation would not have to register as a sex offender, and it would be a third-degree felony under the adolescent sexual activity. We all agree that's not retroactive, so that helps people moving forward, but not necessarily Abby. The government did change their offer based on that. I will note this case dragged on for a very long time because the offer for a very long time was lifetime sex offender registry for Abby. So some of the reason for the delay was based on we weren't able to come to an agreement. This is still a very significant charge that she's admitted to. So this is what I was saying earlier. What held up the plea agreement before was this issue that she had to register as a sex offender. She didn't want to. But she got what she wanted because of the change in the law. With the new law, she wouldn't have had, if she had committed the same act after this law passed, she wouldn't have to register as on the sex offender registry. Tracy Halverson says it is supposed to be traumatizing. Yeah, okay, true. Okay, that's totally true. It is to deter any future behavior. I bet those other kids are aware that they should not do what she did. Oh, 100%. Well, actually, I don't know. Now we changed the law, right? So maybe it's different. Maybe now they think they can get away with it. The part that really bothers me about all of this is that it's the 13-year-old junior high school student. See, if the kid had been 14, if they had both been in high school, right, a 14-year-old and 18-year-old, the 14-year-old could consent, and this changes the dynamic of the whole thing. That doesn't make it right, but it changes kind of where you would go with this if there's something to be done. It's this 13-year-old piece. We've made this decision as a state that you cannot consent at 13. You just cannot consent. But now we have this situation where we're saying, well, actually, maybe you can kind of consent. And I don't like that muddying of the waters. I think that's not clear even to these kids, right? These young people. Because if you were in high school, you're doing sex ed, you could be like, hey, 14's consent. Pretty easy to remember. There's no exceptions. We don't want you to have sex, but before you get married, but if you're gonna go and have sex, maybe wait till someone's 14. Okay, let's see here. Oh, okay, and this bothers me too. So this is the judge. The judge says, okay, the fact that this is a challenging case, I think, is reflected in the fact that the legislature has addressed this in a prospective way rather than retroactive one, but nonetheless a prospective way, and had to grapple with that. What I'm faced with here, in my view, is that I have two young people both in school that engaged in what would have otherwise been consensual. This says conceptual, but it's consensual sexual activity, but for the age of one of the participants. Okay, that bothers me. The whole point is it's not. It can't be. He's 13, cannot consent. Why are we talking about this like, well, if he was 14, he could have consented. Well, he wasn't 14. We wouldn't be here if he was 14. This makes it a sexuality buffer. That makes it a challenge to sentence, because on the one hand, I do have a victim that was 13 years old at the time of the offense. He was legally incapable of giving consent to sex. Period. Full stop. Accurate. I recognize that under the facts of this case, I don't think anybody disputes that he engaged in the activity willingly, but not with consent. Well, he couldn't give consent, so it doesn't matter if it was willingly. I think this is what keeps getting lost here. Let's see. On the other hand, I have Miss Ross, who was 18 years old at the time of the offense. She too was immature, still in high school. Okay. This was a person in her friend group. And though at the time she may have been too immature to understand the gravity of her actions, the law considers her the adult here with full knowledge of the legal repercussions of those actions. Okay. Let's see here. So then the judge says, I recognize that the child victim's family, it feels the system has failed him in some ways, and I recognize how the child's victim's mother may be blaming herself as well, where she is not to blame in the situation either. I want to be clear, I don't believe that the child victim or the child victim's mother has any fault to be had here, and really the focus is on Miss Ross, and I think she recognizes that as well. So then he just notes that she's been compliant with all pretrial conditions. She was in custody for 8 days, home confinement for over 500 days. She's been monitored by ankle monitors. No violations. Okay, let's see here. And then the judge also says, I recognize the victim's request for additional jail time. In this particular instance, I don't know that one, would act as a deterrent for Ms. Ross, two, would support her reformation, let's call it, or reduce her recidivism risk. I recognize it would be sheerly for punishment, which is part of this, right? We're supposed to punish people for wrongdoing. And at this point, I've had somebody on home confinement for over 500 days, so I'm not going to impose an additional period of home confinement. So he does a prison sentence, but then he suspends it and puts her essentially on, I think this is probation, presumptive probation. Let's see here. 400 and, oh, okay, this is all this. Okay, so that's kind of where this ends up. She gets probation. Right? According to my pre-sentence. Because the sentence was suspended. Okay, so that's where this ends up. But that law that wasn't supposed to be retroactive actually ends up kind of being retroactive. It helps this woman get a lighter sentence. So I think that's a problem that, kind of an issue. Now, let me go to this next. So now, I think another piece of this that people are missing is that they're totally trying to set this up. Like, I think we're going down a slippery slope. And so let me play you this. I don't know if any of you listen to Todd Weiler's podcast. I actually listen to it sometimes because it's kind of interesting. I don't agree with Todd because I think he's kind of a groomer. But well, I don't think he's kind of a groomer. He's a groomer. But at least he's kind of smart, and so it's interesting to hear what he's thinking. So here, let's listen to this. Let's see if I can get this to work.
Was we're going to treat all high school kids the same. Some high school kids turn 18 in September. Some turn 18 after.
I think what's important too is, and you know, I mean, I don't know what a typical sentence. And
yes, Todd has a podcast.
Senator Weiler can weigh in, but
so yeah, to disagree about
you know, it's you just can't say that she went unpunished.
And what I don't hear people saying, Corey, is that this is a bad policy. So the policy was we're going to treat all high school kids the same. Some high school kids turn 18 in September. Some turn 18 after graduation. But if you asked any expert behaviorist, is there a difference between someone who's 17 and 9/10 and someone who's 18 in a week? They will tell you there's no difference. We know that their minds are still developing.
Okay. I'm playing this for a reason, because they are setting this up to now. I'm just telling you that this goes down a slippery slope where suddenly you'll be treating I think in DC, they can act for sentencing purposes. They could treat 24-year-olds like juveniles. That's where this is going. So just listen to what he says. He's giving you the justification for doing that.
Till the age of 24 or 25. And so what the policy is if you're in high school and you're having non-violent, non-forceful, consensual sex with another teen, we're going to treat 17 and 18-year-olds who are in high school the same under the law. I haven't heard anyone articulating why that's a bad policy. What they're mad about is they feel like there's, you know, an elite system where there's one set of rules for everyone, and then there's another set of rules for Senator Adams's family, and that's not the case here. The very fact that the bill wasn't retroactive, and you know, a lot of us legislators, we see things that happen in our individual lives, and we say this is a problem. And I think President Adams saw, hey, we're going to give someone 25 years in prison for something that they do in high school. Wait a second, you know, does that make sense? So the bill that Senator Cullimore sponsored, it only changes the law for future high school teens who are charged with having consensual sex with other teens, and it doesn't apply if a prosecutor doesn't want to use it. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So Higher Ground says, what about the high school kids where there's no accurate age because they're here illegally and don't have that info at enrollment? Correct. I think officially there's also some 19-year-olds in high school for that same reason. We had all these illegal aliens come in. You know, we welcomed all into our what we call public government schools. We put them all in the government schools. Suddenly we have 19-year-old seniors. Well, by his logic, those 19-year-olds should be treated just like the 17-year-olds. We shouldn't be making any distinctions. And so I think it's problematic what he's saying, and it leads down a slippery slope. It's just really, I don't think it ends in a good place. And there are examples of, and the other thing is this, he says, we don't want to punish someone for 25 years for something they do when they're 18. Well, you could do all sorts of things when you're 18 that are horrible, and we would want it to impact your whole life. People kill each other at 18. I would want you to go to jail. I'm okay if you murder someone. I'm okay with you going to prison for life. Now here, I don't know that I would say, I don't think she should get 25 years. That seems kind of harsh to me. Maybe I'm soft on this issue, but I do think, here's the thing. I don't actually think it required changing what she was being charged with. If we want to deal with the severity of the punishment, we should change the sentencing guidelines and give more flexibility so judges and prosecutors can consider, hey, this is an 18-year-old. She's shown some remorse for it. She's complying with the various rules. We can offer her a lighter sentence. I do wonder, though, about this registering on the sex offender piece of it, though. Like, should that be something that happens definitively, like always, right? By the way, if anybody wants to call in, feel free to call in. It's 385-899-2134. It's your opportunity to talk to. I'll play a little bit more of Todd Weiler because I think this next piece he says is kind of interesting as well. Although I will say he did just say the piece about it not being retroactive. But like I said, it was not officially retroactive, but it was used in this case. And I think this raises another question about, is everyone being treated the same in this situation? I don't know how often this comes up, but if you went back and looked at other 18-year-olds who also were in high school and had sex with people under 14, were they treated the same way as Senate President Adams's granddaughter? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing because the change only added a very narrow option, just like Senator Weiler explained, right?
Maybe actually I played the piece I wanted. I realized the times that I did it off the podcast on my phone thing instead of off this one online. So that second piece is what I wanted to play there. Okay, we'll do this real quick. Let's play. Well, let me do this first, actually. There is an ethics commission for legislators. So let me just share this with you guys for those of you who are so inclined to file an ethics complaint. We have a complaint where you can file against legislators. And so Tracy Halverson says, Adams broke the law. He used his position to influence the sentencing of his granddaughter. Yeah, fair enough. And I think the answer to this, though, is someone should file an ethics complaint. I looked at the reports. So there's different ethics commissions. And I will just say that I have filed one against some elected officials in the past, and it resulted in a hearing. We lost, which we expected, so that's not surprising. Oh, it looks like we have a call. You can put them through. But this is an option for people if you're interested. You could go and file an ethics complaint against Senator Adams. And let me just add before we get Tracy, I looked at the annual reports. For the ones that I could pull up, there's no ethics complaints that have been filed, like none. So someone should get up there and file an ethics complaint. Like, let's give it a shot, right? All right, Tracy, let's hear. What do you feel about the situation?
Hey, Goud. Well, bottom line, there's a law that prevents them from using their position to influence anything and to benefit anybody. So he broke the law. And it's disgusting that people like Todd Weiler and all these other senators and representatives defending him, that it's okay because it wasn't violent. That was just gross, what I just heard Todd Weiler say. It's okay because it wasn't violent. The whole reasoning makes me just sick to my stomach. And as to your point as a parent, when somebody feels bad that their child does something bad, they feel like it is their fault as a parent because you're not there teaching them. She probably felt like she wasn't there for him, and then this happened to him, and she could have prevented it if she was there for him. But what is so gross is you can see that he used his position to influence and change something that impacted his granddaughter. And as a mom, I think about people like getting babysitters. You would call an 18-year-old girl would be a typical babysitter that you would ask to come watch your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Now she doesn't even have to be on sex registry. That is crazy to me. And obviously her peers knew that what she was doing was wrong because they put it in the court documents that they did when they listed the information in the indictment, that they knew that was wrong what she was doing because of the age difference. And so now it's okay because it's Stuart Adams' granddaughter and they changed the law. And you come to a good point with that judge. So to me, they said that they weren't using it retroactively. Mm-hmm. Did they pressure that judge, the first judge, so much and he didn't want anything to do with it because he didn't believe in what they were doing? Is that why he recused himself? Because they're the ones, Cox picks the judges and the Senate is the one that affirms them. So Stuart Adams has play in these people, in these judges. So is that why he recused himself? We don't know. And then the way that Cox acted, they're just gross. They're just a big corrupt organization. Is exactly what they are.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, okay, so there's a lot there. Do you think that Stuart Adams should resign?
I do, and I'm actually doing an online petition. We're going to put it on the Restore Utah's flag page, and we'll push it out through all our channels. But yeah, we're asking him to resign, and we're asking the legislature to hold him accountable. Do your stinking job. It was malfeasance of his office to use his influence. So do your stinking job with the Utah State Court, or the Utah State Constitution says is that you are to impeach them for malfeasance. They need to start holding these people accountable for what they're doing, because it's become a corrupt organization. That's what our government is. It's nothing different than the mob.
Okay, I'm wondering, Tracy, when you're talking to people, what kind of reactions are you getting from them? So and just as background, like when I look online, I feel like it's like mixed. There's some people that they're okay with the policy, so they're fine with what happened. There's a lot of people just jumping to his defense. Like in that podcast that I played, if John Johnson actually is on the podcast defending Stuart Adams, which I thought was kind of weird because,
yeah,
right. But I'm interested to hear what you're hearing out there.
What I'm hearing is people are angry. They are angry that he did what he did, and that they think that there is a special elite club up there. And to me, it's only the syndicate people that are defending them. It's the ones that they run in that same crowd, the same corrupt organization together. They're all benefiting from government. They're the ones that are defending it. That it's not the people. The people are ticked that happened. That boy, I mean, you read in there that he's even considered suicide over this.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is be a senator's granddaughter, and you can go rape a 13-year-old. Come on, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
She needed to face the consequences that anybody else. And obviously her peers knew it was wrong. How can they have more understanding to know that it was wrong? Because of the age difference.
That's a great point. It's interesting that it's actually one of their friends that reported it. So they actually, I don't know if they knew the law or they just felt like, wait, something seems wrong here. And they felt like we had to report it. That's fascinating, right? I'm just surprised by that. So I guess kudos to them.
It's obvious that they're circling the wagons to protect each other up there on the hill. And, to Carrie Ann Lisenby, there's no excuse for her. Shame on her if she's not reading her own stinking bills. And if she can't comprehend them, then you shouldn't be up on the hill. And that's with all of their bills. You try to tell them what the bill does, and they just like, no, that doesn't do that. This bill doesn't do that. They don't listen. And so it's about time they need to be held accountable. And I think people should pressure and say, step down, Stuart Adams. You screwed up and you harmed somebody. See, they're only thinking about her future. What about the victim? What about that little boy? His innocence was taken at 13 years old. And then it's okay because it was the senator's granddaughter.
Yeah.
Like, what about him? All of them just talk about her punishment. They never talk about the victim.
Yeah.
And how he felt.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Anyways, that's my rant. But yeah, I'm calling for his resignation. I'm doing an online petition. So on Facebook, we're in the Restore Utah flag, so you can come find it and you fill it out, and it automatically sends an email. You add your name to the petition, and it'll automatically send an email to every one of them. And we'll put it up on our RestoreUtahFlag.com website. So you can find it there too. But yeah, we need to start holding these people accountable. Utah is pretty disgusting. I don't know if you saw that other bill that Todd Weiler ran, and it made it so if it's your sibling, it's not rape. It's like, did somebody's granddaughter or grandchild rape a sibling too? Is that why you changed that law? It's so gross.
Oh man. Okay. Well, on that note, thanks for calling. I don't even know what I don't know that I want to dig more into that. Oh, that's like so gross. Okay. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Goud. Okay, bye.
Okay. Well, so folks, you can go check out that if you want to sign onto their petition. That's one way of putting political pressure on President Adams if you want him to resign. I think we have another caller, and I think actually, let me see. I saw Higher Ground was, I think this is the post that they were talking about. So let me put this up. This is, it looks like it's showing you differences in how two adults were treated. So this looks like this is the female, the male. Is really well done. Well done. Yeah, hey, Mr. Producer, if you're able to put in the next caller, that's fine. You want to? I don't. I think my producer is having thunderstorms and power outages where he lives. He doesn't live in Salt Lake County like some of us. Although I guess maybe there's some people that don't live in Salt Lake County on here. Like I feel like maybe Disagree Butter lives in Utah County. I don't know why I think that, but okay. So this 19-year-old boy, see, like, but that's the one difference. You have a 19-year-old, 18-year-old. Do we know if this 19-year-old was in high school? I'd be interested to know that. Okay. Do we have a caller?
We have Monica.
Hi. Thanks, Mr. Producer. Okay, Monica. I think I have up the what is this called? Your graph. So can you? I guess I'm wondering here.
Yeah.
Was the 19-year-old in this chart also in high school, or is this someone out of high school?
Nope, it is somebody out of high school who actually was on a university chat board that he had to submit age verification info to get onto. So he had to submit like, hey, I'm a college student, right? Provide his college ID. So, and that's where he was, I guess you could say, entrapped by an undercover officer who gets on there, who eventually basically lets the 19-year-old know, hey, I'm actually 13. You know, it's an undercover officer. It's not a 13-year-old girl. But you can see the difference between the two cases, right? Right in front of your eyes there. I mean, the difference is, what, a year in age? And the other difference is, like, there is an actual victim for adult A, which we know in this case is Stuart Adams's granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're talking basically four first-degree felonies get pled down to 1 second-degree felony for her and 3 Class A misdemeanors, whereas this other kid, and I'm not going to say kid, this other adult, 19-year-old adult, started out with, it looked like 2 first-degree felonies and 2 second-degree felonies. And and ends up with 1 first-degree felony and 1 second-degree felony. So, there's a huge difference there, especially when you consider one had an actual victim, and that would be adult A, and didn't serve any prison time there, and also does not have to register as a sex offender. Whereas this 19-year-old boy, is currently serving a sentence at the Utah State Prison, has been imprisoned and hasn't been out of jail since the time of arrest. So going on 2 years now.
Interesting. Okay. I will say, though, I think that high school distinction is the one that people like Todd Weiler would point to, right? That he's not in high school. Although, to be totally, if you think of the totality of what Weiler said, he actually said people from 18 to 25 are still not fully developed. And so this 19-year-old would actually fall within that range. Interesting. I don't know how they would deal with this. Do they think?
In his case, even said that. Yeah, the judge in his case even said that.
Oh.
Can you hear me out?
Wait, what did the judge say? He said the piece about the 18 to 25-year-olds?
The judge in the 19-year-old's case
even admitted during sentencing that he was most likely not mature enough to be making decisions like this. Basically, that his brain was not developed. I think it's sad in that case.
Okay. Man, that's crazy. Have you heard of any situations though where it's someone that's just like this girl, so that 18-year-old in high school having sex with someone who's under 14? Like, do we have any examples of that we can point to that's like almost kind of that exact same comparator?
That's a good question. No, I don't know of any personally, but this one was brought to my attention, and and I think it's a good. It is an interesting comparison. At least it's instructive, because what we're seeing is, like, here we have somewhat similar circumstances, right? Like, supposedly, in one case, a 13-year-old victim and an actual 13-year-old victim. And, the age difference is a year. I don't buy this high school distinction thing. I don't. High school or no, it doesn't matter. If any, most kids know at that age that what they're doing is wrong. And that, it's a 13-year-old, for Pete's sake. This isn't a peer. This is a 13-year-old.
Yep.
So I don't buy that. I know that's a huge talking point, and they keep bringing it up, and they hammer that. And I think they want people to focus on that instead of what Stuart Adams actually did to influence the outcome of a relative's case for rape, and to mitigate her sentencing. And in his underling, Cullimore, and working with the defense lawyer, like, how does that not all reek of undue influence and of bending the justice system to their desired outcomes? I think Tracy put it very, very well. But what's crazy is, like, how quiet, like, all the establishment has been. I mean, the only sounds coming from establishment Republicans has been the circling of the wagons. That's the only sound you're hearing right now. Have you heard of anybody coming out and saying that, anybody in an elected position saying, we need some accountability here? I mean, they flipped a lot of nothing burgers when it came down to Natalie Klein, but and where there was, like, that was nothing in comparison to the injustice going on here, and to the abuse of authority and power. But boy, everybody and their dog put out a press release, right? Put out a statement of condemnation. The legislature actually condemned her to hell, basically. We condemn her. Condemn is the language they use. And nobody got raped in Massachusetts.
No, it's a great.
But here we did.
Yeah, no, what you're saying is a great point, because it's actually been there. It's either silence or the circling the wagons. So you had John Johnson go on a podcast, and I think he's done some social media posts defending what happened. Kira Birkeland came out and defended it, which I thought was really interesting, because she has, like, a habit of exaggerating and lying about things. So, but she's she sells herself as this, like, anti-establishment person, but she literally just fell right in line. I've seen other people that I was kind of surprised by. So, that kind of, I was surprised that they fell in line like that, which then made me think, like, oh, okay, this is actually an establishment person doing a good job of selling themselves as not being that. So maybe that's the value of this whole thing, is we get to separate establishment from kind of actual grassroots people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because, like, I think Kara Birkeland just joined the board of Utah Parents United. Here we have a parent who is saying my son was violated and there was no justice for them, and yet somebody on their board is going to bat for Stuart Adams here, and his involvement in, again, mitigating the sentencing of his granddaughter in raping a child. Wow. I don't even know what to say on that. I feel like, we're in an upside down world when, protecting the Senate president is the priority over advocating for the parent whose child has actually been victimized. And it's objective. Like, I don't know, you read through the case there, and it doesn't sound like any of those facts were ever in dispute. So if the facts were not in dispute, then what happened happened. And that objectively is rape. I don't know how you can sugarcoat that, or how you can even try to, diminish the severity and the seriousness of that. But they're doing it in order to basically protect Stuart Adams.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Final question. Do you think Stuart Adams should resign? I think the answer is yes, but I'll let you say it.
If he had any shame, he would, right? He seems very good at calling on other people to resign, but when it comes to cleaning his own house, it's like sweep the dirt under the rug and act like, oh no, this is all normal, sweep the bodies under the rug. I feel like it's so dirty, but if he had shame, he would. And if the other Republican leadership in the state had any sort of shame too, I think they would call on him to resign. I feel like his credibility and has been tarnished. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling in, Monica. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Goud. Bye.
Wow. You guys have, anyway, if anyone else wants to call in, feel free to call in. Let's see here. Also, Mr. Producer says Stuart Adams should resign. He has an exclamation point, so I think he's yelling. I think I'm going to lose him, though. So let me I'm going to have Brandy call in. But she'll call my phone. Hold on. Maybe I can send her actually a link. Hold on. Give me 1 second while I figure out how to do this the right way. I think it's better when people call through this thing. I can't think of the word for it, but through the system. Oh, here, I'll invite her. So copy. Yeah, if anyone else wants to call and talk about this, the number is 385-899-2134. I'll read comments in a second here. So let me send this to Brandy so we can do it. Back home with Brandy. I can't say it with a Southern accent because I'm from Illinois. It would be kind of funny if we were from the South. Back home with Brandy. Copy link. Actually, let's see. Okay, let's see what we got here. I think we may have lost Mr. Producer. Okay, yeah, he said his computer and the web shut down. They must be having quite a storm where he lives. Let's see what we got. We got some comments here. Okay, Truth Salute says ethics commission in Utah and lots of laughing emojis. Yes, there's multiple ethics commissions actually. Like I said, there's the legislative one. There's one for the governor, lieutenant. I think like the constitutional officers that are statewide elected. There's one for them, and I feel like there might be one more. But I would tell people, if you have the time, take the time and draft out a complaint and do it. There's no harm in it. Oh, here's Brandy. Okay.
Hi, Goud.
Hey, Brandy, how are you? You're on the air.
Hi, Goud. How you doing?
Good. I told everyone we're doing our Back Home with Brandy new segment about what's going on in my home state of Illinois.
Yeah. And you've missed a lot, Goud, since I last talked to you.
Okay.
We have some new developments here. The one I'm most upset about currently is that I guess it's going to be up in the fall again. They would like to do, Pritzker would like to do $1.50 delivery tax on all deliveries to all residents of the state of Illinois. That means your Amazon, your pizza, anything you order that's delivered to you, they want to charge $1.50 tax on it. because Chicago didn't do so well with its budgeting apparently, and they need the money for the school system for 2026. So they're going to tax the whole state is the plan. It got passed in the spring in the Illinois Senate, and it's supposed to come back up in the fall, which I'm kind of bad. I use Amazon quite a bit because I don't have time to shop really. So that will definitely affect my life and all my deliveries from Amazon every day.
That's
If that
insane.
doesn't
Are you
work.
gonna, so like when I because I also buy stuff from Amazon, but I never, you know, they give you that option to like reduce the number of deliveries to like save the environment.
Yes. Yes.
I never do that because
Well,
I'm always like, don't care.
you, I don't either because like a lot of times it doesn't even make a difference. It still comes the same day and stuff. So it's a very confusing option for me. And sometimes I need things right away. So I admit I don't always do that either. But yeah, I mean, every time you order anything, a pizza or anything, any grocery delivery. So a lot of us are a little bit scared of that because that will, that adds up pretty fast.
Yeah.
And it seems it's kind of unfair to the entire state that we have to like support the Chicago school system because Mayor Johnson didn't budget so well when he started housing all the migrants. And that just wasn't in the budget. So he had to take the school money to house the migrants. And now we got to get school money. But, the rest of the state has to pay for it. And I don't live in the city of Chicago.
Right.
And the residents there are all kinds of upset with him because they're really mad because their property taxes, I guess, were going to be raised, and he actually ran his campaign on not raising property taxes, but then he told them he had to because they housed all the migrants. So
Yeah.
we live in a very odd state, I feel, here because like the other thing that Illinois has got going on, apparently Pritzker signed some legislation in that children who don't have status, documented status as they call it, now can get government assistance or Illinois government assistance with college tuition. They can get grants and everything for in-state schools, which he just signed that last week. So we have an odd state here. We have a governor who really runs on not telling Illinois residents what he can do for them. We never hear what he's going to do for us. It's always what he's going to take our money and do for others. So I find it very odd we keep voting him back in because he never tells me what he's going to do for me. He just tells me where he's going to spend my money. And between Chicago and him, they're just misspending our money all the time. And I'm not really getting anything back for it besides higher property taxes and gas tax. So I'm just being taxed all the time.
Well, just so you know, one of my higher ground says this is for Utah. We're already giving in-state college tuition to illegals in Utah, I believe. I think
goodness.
Yeah, Utah's pretty much like an open or sanctuary state. But I think for illegals, I might be wrong on this, but I think they have to claim asylum, which is easy to do, right? You just come in and say, "Oh, I'm afraid if I go home, they're going to kill me or whatever, or they'll discriminate against me because I'm trans," and then they'll give it to you. And then while you're going through the process, you can get in-state tuition in Utah. So actually, we're like ahead of you guys on that one.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry to say this.
I find, not to get sidetracked on the immigration thing, but I find the whole asylum thing kind of weird because in one statement, they're like, oh, we have to come to America because our country's so bad. And this is a better country. But then at the same token, they turn around and say America is a horrible country and it's the worst country in the world. But then everybody wants to come here. But then if you dare say like their country's a bad country, you're racist. So it hurts my head.
It's very, the thing is, Brandy, like every problem I think in America can be fixed by getting rid of all the illegal aliens. Your 150 tax, you don't need that anymore if you get rid of the illegals. You don't need to give them in-state tuition if you just get them out. Like no one, there's not Americans saying, well, obviously you got the liberal white ladies that love to have all the illegals here, but I think most people want them gone, and we would like to focus on our own people.
Well, it's costing a fortune. And I mean, this is all over the illegals being housed in Chicago. Like there's no budget for it. And so
Yeah.
now they have to keep finding new ways to support that. And they sacrificed the Chicago schools, which is baffling that you sacrificed your own children for this cause. And it's like, we just don't have the money for it. And then Chicago's all kinds of messed up because now, Pritzker's on TV because he's upset that Trump might send the National Guard here. And we've created an environment that, like, we actually have a group of people that are pro-crime. And they're
Yeah, I know, right?
so far.
Prefer
It's
to be
like,
carjacked. Come on.
and and here's the thing that has changed, because you haven't lived here in what, almost 20 years now. Is that what we're
It's
at?
been more than I moved in 2000. It's been 25 years since I lived in
Oh my
Illinois.
God. Okay. Well, this is this is what you have missed, is that, like, back when we were growing up, because I remember when you had your apartment down by UIC,
Oh, yeah.
like, there's just certain areas of Chicago you just knew not to go into. And you had that apartment by Robert Taylor Homes, and I remember walking by that and having some problems with, people there harassing me and stuff. Um, but, like, you just avoided certain parts of the city and you were okay. The crime has now left the city. So they actually drive out of the city and they go to places like Naperville, Oak Brook, Hinsdale, and they do their carjackings and their crime there and then actually drive back to the city, which wasn't a thing when we were kids. So you're no longer kind of like the areas we thought were safe, like Oak Brook was super safe.
Yep.
Now it's like they come out there because they know the people out there are a little more well to do and they have nicer cars to carjack. Same with Hinsdale. And so, like, nobody's really even safe in the suburbs anymore. Michigan Avenue used to be super safe, and now
Ugh,
it's like,
it used to be
it's,
so great, remember?
yeah,
I heard it's horrible now.
it's so we used to bring my daughter down there for to see the Christmas lights and go to the candy store, and we haven't done it in years because it's kind of unpredictable, and you have all these teenagers that, like, go down Michigan Avenue hundreds at a time and they're beating people up and they're jumping on cars, and it's so unpredictable. I can't bring my daughter down there anymore, so we don't go there for Christmas because and you don't want to get caught up in that. Chicago's got the whole thing with, the police don't get any support from any of the mayors, and so they're always told to stand down. And you see these videos of people just jumping on cars and doing crazy stuff, and the police is just standing there because they can't help you in any way. So
Interesting.
yeah, so we've had some problems with that. So it's creating an environment where, like, in the suburbs every weekend we have teen takeovers and they can't get control of these kids and stuff, and it just wasn't something we had as a kid at all.
Yeah, I feel like we lived a really different life. I know Trump has talked about, like you kind of mentioned this, that he would mobilize the guard. And I don't know if it would just be the guard. Like, I think he has authority to mobilize the guard in certain situations, but also he could just focus a lot of federal resources on Chicago. Would you support that? If you
100%, yeah. Like, that's why I don't get where like this became a political divide and, like, the left is pro-crime and the right is anti-crime. I don't get it, because, like, who wants that? And I remember, God, being in your living room when you had that apartment by UIC, and I'm eating dinner with you and we're watching a murder scene on the news. And remember, I'm like, is that down the street from you? It looks really familiar. And we looked down the street and it was.
yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my goodness, like, this is horrible." But it's because you kind of were in a bad area by the Robert Taylor homes. But it's like that just didn't happen out here. When you lived in Woodridge and we were in Downers Grove, none of that ever happened. You had to go find it, and it's just crazy that it's unraveling every weekend. Like, there's some crazy stuff here. Glen Ellen had a teen takeover at their pool. It's like
Ugh.
Bolingbrook's had several. Yeah, it's just changed so much. Like, we were just so much, I felt safer in the suburbs then. So I don't understand, like, why anybody would want to keep crime. Like, why they don't want any intervention. And the problems haven't gotten any better. They've just, I think, gotten worse since when we were up in the city. Um,
Ugh,
so yeah, I
God.
mean, yeah, it's changed a bit, and I just don't get why people don't want the help. And, like, Pritzker's on TV telling him to, like, stay away, and then he's accusing him of being, like, senile in some way, which is baffling to me after 4 years of Biden and them telling us he was okay. How they possibly think Trump is senile for wanting to go fight crime in Chicago. I was
Yeah.
like, if that's senile, I'm senile too, because it seems like a good idea to me to make it safer down there. I mean, it's still the same thing. Every holiday weekend, Labor Day's weekend's coming up. Guess what's going to happen Labor Day weekend? More shootings, because every time we have a holiday, the shootings go up. So,
Crazy.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks. No, we appreciate the update. Like this is important for listeners to be able to see where Democrats are heading. Illinois is a great example of that. So we appreciate the call. Will you call back again?
Of course, if you would like me to come back, just let me know and I'll tell you what you missed. So,
Okay, cool. Thanks.
no problem. You have a good night.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon.
And
Bye.
bye.
It's funny. I sometimes have people that'll be like, "Have you ever thought about moving back to Illinois?" Nope. It's really unfortunate. It's actually a really great state, really great people. So it's sad to see what's happened to it. Let's see what we got here. We got some comments. What am I going to read the comments? So Higher Ground said, in Utah, students who are residents of the state and can document their residency for at least 12 consecutive months prior to the first day of classes for the term in which they are enrolled are eligible for in-state tuition. This includes U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or those who meet the requirements of the Utah Higher Education Compact. To qualify, students must also be claimed as dependents on a Utah resident's federal tax return for at least 2 years prior to the beginning of, and then cuts off. I don't know what this Utah Higher Education Compact is. That's a comment from Higher Ground, so I'm not sure what that compact says. Let's see. Carmelita Canales says, Cox and Aaron Spendenhall say, hold my beer, Chicago. Yeah, right. I know, like, I'm sure that Salt Lake City will quickly rise to the occasion. People with Carmelita again. People with TPS parole and asylum seekers pay $0 to Obamacare. Is that true? Wow, God, like they get everything for free. We bring in all these illegal aliens and then we give them free stuff. I don't understand it. And like when I got terminated from my job, I had to get health insurance. And I was able to get it through the Guard because I'm in the Utah National Guard. And honestly, it's actually very cheap and very good. I probably should have had it the whole time. But if I didn't do that, I have friends that are in my position that are not in the military, and they have to go buy it off the Obamacare exchanges. And the cost of it is insane. And the only reason they can afford it is they're getting government subsidies on top of so like the cost, let's say, is it's some crazy amount per month. They actually get a government subsidy, even though they're professional. So ostensibly, they should be able to make enough at some point to be able to pay it themselves. But the cost is so high. So to give it to people who come here illegally for free just is offensive. I don't understand why anyone supports illegal immigration. It's very weird to me. Okay, let's see. We have about 18 minutes left. So let's talk about this gerrymandering thing. I don't know if the gerrymander decision has come out while we've been on the air, so that could be an issue. Also, like I said before, we've lost our producer. So if you want to call in, well, now I'm having an issue here. You can call my personal phone. It's 385-237-7960. So if anybody wants to call in and make a comment, you can just call my personal phone. I can put you up to the speaker here and you can make comments on whatever you want. Obviously, within reason here. I mean, appropriate for public consumption. No, I'm not saying I'm not going to censor anybody. But okay, so we're supposed to get a decision today about this issue of gerrymandering in Utah. And the thing I just wanted people to remind you about is that our maps are actually not gerrymandered. So, and I need to find this article I had on it because I'm wondering if I forgot to pick that one. Give me 1 second. Let me just Google this real quick. So there's a group called comes out of Princeton, and they have a gerrymander project. Of course, I'm sure it's in a college, so it's going to be full of liberals. But they go around and they they evaluate your maps to see if they are gerrymandered, and they have various different elements and characteristics that they look for to determine if they have been gerrymandered. So in the case of Utah, what I thought was interesting is they actually had given us a good grade, and they use like a okay, hold on, let's see if I can find this. I'm annoyed because I had this up before, and I usually cut and paste the article so that I can quickly pull the stuff up, and I didn't do it this time. Anyway, here's the thing. They gave us a good grade. I think they gave us like an A, because the districts are all kind of equal urban, rural. The 4 districts, equal urban, rural. There's not like a racial, like in some areas they kind of draw these racial districts. We don't do that in Utah. I think we don't have like enough minorities to do that. Like in the South, they do that a lot, even though they shouldn't, and it should be illegal to consider race when you're doing drawing districts, because it's stereotyping people based on the way that they look. It's really offensive, actually. And I'll say that just personally, like if there was a whole bunch of Indian Americans or people of Indian descent that all lived, and you could actually concentrate a district, let's say you could draw one, I would find it really offensive if you did that, because while a lot of Indians are very liberal, bizarrely liberal, because they're conservative on cultural issues, and then they're bizarrely liberal on they're like socialists, because I think India is a socialist country, and they don't come here because they're trying to run away from socialism. They come here for opportunity. It's a little bit different. But so if you could draw that district, I actually think that'd be really offensive, because you'd be stereotyping all of the people because of the way that they look. So like I'd be of the same descent, but my views are completely the opposite of a lot of Indian people. And so it wouldn't make any sense to draw a district like that. And I think we should actually ban those types of districts. In the case of Utah, we actually, we don't do that because we don't have any sort of concentrated minority to be able to do that. And I think that's what makes us a little bit different. Okay, here, I actually just found what I was looking for. So I forgot I tweeted about this. Or I don't know what you call it. What do you call it? Does anyone know? What do you call a tweet now? Oh, I wanted to play one more thing. Oh, hold on. Okay. We'll get back to it. Okay, we'll circle back. I'm sorry. I totally forgot. I wanted to play the Governor Cox thing. We didn't get around to that. So let me play this, because and obviously if anyone else wants to call in, like I said, feel free to call in. I'm going to play you this because I just thought this was kind of crazy. Okay, let me share this. And I thought this was crazy because, sometimes it's what, and by the way, Lindsay Aerts posted this is a very long clip from Governor Cox explaining his views on this, but I actually thought the 3.5 minutes beforehand was what was fascinating. And I'll just say this, I'm going to play this. He's very off-putting in general, and I think he comes off kind of homosexual personally. And I say this as a homosexual myself. Here we go.
In regards to Stuart Adams, do you think that there should be a third-party investigation or at least a legislative ethics inquiry into the allegation against him?
What is the allegation against him?
The allegation that he...
is there something that needs to be investigated? Are there facts in dispute here?
Well, the allegation is that he...
Let me just say, he's pretending like he doesn't know what the issue is. This is during his monthly press conference, but I find that to be kind of weird. Like, he knows exactly what the problem is. So to pretend like you don't know what you're being asked about is just strange to me.
Promoted, and he's denied this, that he promoted legislation that would benefit a relative in a criminal case, and that President Adams has denied that, saying that's not the case.
Is there an allegation that he promoted it? What is the allegation?
The allegation
that he's denied.
The allegation is that he promoted legislation to benefit a relative in a criminal case.
To whom did he promote?
Pardon me?
To whom did he promote this legislation?
Well, as has been reported, he allegedly supported that legislation at the Capitol. The Speaker of the House is now convening a meeting of stakeholders to review whether that is the right policy. There have been rallies at the Capitol calling on the president to resign over this. There's a state senator and a Salt Lake County
I know
councilman.
you still haven't given me the allegation, though. To whom did he promote this?
See, like, this is all fake. What he's saying is totally, this is just, this must be something that they thought of to kind of push back and hopefully get the questioning to shut down. But this is totally fake.
Used his power.
Okay, there's in how did he abuse his power? Who did he promote this to? Who did he talk about this to?
He talked about it to his Senate Majority Leader,
And they both admitted that. Is there anybody else? Is there an allegation that he promoted?
But they admitted it after it came up. Like, someone had to have disclosed this for the admission to happen. I think I'd like to know who disclosed this to Gerke. Where did the story come from? Who was the actual person to say this conversation happened between Senate President Adams and Kirk Cullimore? Now, to me, it seems like maybe it's Kirk Cullimore, because, like, I feel like only the two of them knew that conversation happened, is what it sounds like, unless other people knew about it too and someone just disclosed it. I don't know if he mentioned it to, for example, the defense attorney, Kara Tangerow. If he did that, it's possible that she went to the press. My understanding is she's pretty political. And you can actually see that from what happened in the case, right? She's politically savvy. That's actually, like, if you are accused of a crime and you're being prosecuted, it should be a good defense attorney, because she went and did everything to get her client a better deal.
To someone other than his?
That he talked to the defense attorneys, that he sent letters to the judge, that he...
Okay, that's very different. Those are two very different things. Again, I'm trying to understand. You're saying there's some allegation out there. I don't think there are any facts in dispute. I think the facts are very clear. He talked to the Senate Majority Leader. The Senate Majority Leader took that information. He went into and he proposed a piece of legislation. I found out about this case that you're referring to when I read the article. The Senate president never talked to me about this. I learned about it in the Salt Lake Tribune when Robert Gerke wrote that article.
Whether the allegation, whether you agree or disagree, whether there is merit to the allegation, or if there is any impropriety on behalf of the Senate president, there are some people who believe that there is. So the question is, should there be, in your view, a third-party review and or investigation, or at least a legislative ethics inquiry into their concerns?
So to get that legislative ethics inquiry, someone needs to file a complaint. So, if you're out there and you think that you want this inquiry to happen, file a complaint. Like I said, that commission exists, and at least for the past few years, they have not gotten a single complaint. So they haven't had to actually act. It would be good to get them to actually start looking into legislators and what's going on the Hill.
So I don't think there's nothing to investigate. The facts of this are very, very clear. The facts are abundantly clear. It's been reported.
Well, like I said, first, we don't know what Stuart Adams wrote to support his granddaughter, so that's a missing fact. We also don't know why the first judge recused himself from the case. That's a second missing fact. And there's probably even more to the story that we don't know. Like, for example, it might be interesting to dig more into the process that every other provision in SB 213 went through and how this one circumvented it. I don't know if that's something, is it unusual? Is it normal? Does it happen every session? I don't know. And then also, I will say I'd like to go listen to the hearings that happened for the bills on the floor, because it sounds like this issue may have popped during that, but not the details of what happened here.
I don't think anybody's denied that what happened.
But they didn't voluntarily disclose it to begin with, because I think this would not be an issue had President Adams actually disclosed what was driving the proposal in the first place, right? He didn't do that. That's actually part of the problem.
As I mentioned, I learned about this when you all learned about it. Actually, some of you probably learned about it before I learned about the allegations. And so the question is, should he have told me about it? Should he have leaned on me? I would love to read the Salt Lake Tribune story about.
Okay. Well, I think the answer is no. He shouldn't have leaned on him, but I think he should have disclosed what was driving the change. That would have solved this entire. I don't think we wouldn't be talking about this today if we wouldn't be even discussing this if it had been disclosed from the beginning and we understood what was the motivation for the change and how it was used to help his granddaughter. Because of the fact this happened in the background, that there's kind of secrecy around it, and then clearly it impacted how his granddaughter was treated. I think this has become a controversy. So he could have avoided the whole controversy by just being honest about it from the beginning. And I'll just say this. The law change should have probably waited until after his granddaughter had been sentenced in whatever form that was. Then we would have had a cleaner case to say, okay, let's say she got 25 years. He could come and say, hey, that's too long. This is totally ridiculous. And then he should have gone and said, hey, let me look at all the other cases like this, because I'm sure that she's not the only 18-year-old in high school to ever have sex with someone under 14. Let me look at all the cases and see what she treated differently. I think this is a problem that we haven't accounted for. Let's go and try to solve this, and let's make it retroactive to fix all these different people's issues. I think we had more respect for them. Now, Disagree Butter says if he disclosed and abstained from voting. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a fair point. It probably made it clear that he wouldn't change your committee assignments and whatnot based on how you voted. So you were free to vote however you wanted. I don't know. I think he'd have to explicitly say that, because I feel like otherwise these legislators are all going to think, oh, he's totally going to destroy me if I don't do what he wants. And I think that's a lot of what's driving all these guys that are out there essentially selling their credibility to protect him. That's what I found so weird about it. When because I like John Johnson. I think he's a really interesting guy, but I found it weird that he went on a podcast to defend Senate President Adams. Like, why would you do that? Like, gross. I'm not I would just be like, you know what, that's a you issue. It has nothing to do with me. I don't want any part of this. I'm not defending you. Go defend yourself. And that's the piece that's been kind of missing, is that I don't feel like he's had to really defend himself. He just puts out these statements, and nobody's like, hey, that's kind of a problem, right? Like, we don't, like, you can't just put out a statement. You actually need to do an interview. He never does those types of things. Let's see what we got here. We only have a couple minutes, so here, why don't we we'll just play the beginning of this. This is what I was talking about.
It's a lie. What's the how is it a lie, sir? Or what's your defense for using your position as Senate leader to essentially avoid accountability for your grandchild raping and being on the child sex registry? Lie. Thank you, it's a lie? It's a lie. What's the how is
I don't, I've heard him talk before. He sounds kind of like I'm talking about President Adams. He sounds kind of like a little bit tired.
It's a lie, sir.
It's a lie.
How? All the evidence shows that it's not a lie.
It's a lie.
So do you condemn the new bill, SB 213, that essentially made your grandchild get away with raping a child?
That's a lie.
How is it a lie, sir?
Would you leave?
I'm just asking for comment. Can you give me a comment? I'm just asking for comment. Can you give me a comment? Okay, so he didn't have much to say, did he?
Anyway, kind of weird, right? He's just like what's interesting though is he felt the need to run back and say that's a lie, but that's all he has. He could have answered the question, right, and said, hey, okay, here's why it's not what you think it is. He's had time now to come up with an answer. I'm sure that he has a communications staff that could have developed an answer for him, practiced it with him, and made him prepared for this type of I guess it's kind of like an ambush press thing. Let me say, when I say I don't have an issue with what he did. I think we need more journalism like this. And even the journalism that happened at the press conference, because Brian Malahy and Lindsay Ayers actually pushed back on the governor when he tried to pretend like he didn't know what was going on. So this is the type of journalism we need, is people actually getting out there and pushing back on these elected officials and be like, no, like, I want you to answer the question. Now he ends up, this Taylor Hanson, like, I think they like kick him out of they kick him out of the Capitol, which is kind of weird because I don't think he did anything wrong here. But, you know, hopefully we'll see how this develops. Like I said, I think if you think that President Adams should resign, you know, you want to, Tracy said that they're going to have up that petition for people to sign. You could file an ethics complaint against him with that Utah Ethics Commission. I'm guessing that unless they make a decision that actually finds that he violated the ethics rules, we won't actually know what happens with your complaint, except we'll know that you filed it because they'll, at the end of the year, they'll put out a report just saying how many complaints they got, and there would be one. And usually there's none. So that's a positive. We at least got one complaint. And because what happens is that, and this is what happened when I filed an ethics complaint, is that we were told that if we disclose any details about it, we could be held in contempt. So just something for you to consider, but it's still it could be worth going through the process, holding them to account. And then I'll say this, like in the case that I did, the Attorney General's office spent a ton of time drafting all these responses to us. It was really funny. I was like, wow, they spent hours doing this. I can't believe that they wasted all this time. And I think our complaint was legitimate. It's just, I assumed because the commission was picked by the governor that they wouldn't find in our favor. But it's still fun to go through the process and see like the Attorney General's office have to like churn time to respond. So they'll have to do that to you if you go and you file that complaint. On that note, we are at 7:00. And that means that we are at time for this week. So we will see. This is the Goud Crowd. Thank you for listening. We are on every Monday from 5 to 7. You can stream us live on X. So on my X handle, which is at Goud for Utah. And then at the Utah Mainstream Media X handle, their YouTube, their Rumble, and at kmmu.org. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.